Now, let's go back to 1798. America was a much younger nation, just emerging into its voice on the global stage. The Alien Enemies Act was crafted as one of 4 controversial laws we've come to collectively call the Alien and Sedition Acts. This particular piece of legislation gave the federal government sweeping powers, all right? Powers that allow for the arrest, relocation, and yes, deportation of non-citizens from nations deemed hostile during times of war or invasion. Historically, it's been used sparingly, with perhaps the most poignant example being its application during World War II against Japanese, German, and Italian nationals. It's a sharp-edged tool and not one often pulled from the governmental toolbox. Fast forward to today, well, to 2025 rather, President Trump invoked that same centuries-old law to mobilize a large-scale deportation operation, aligning it with claims of national security. It is said to target the alleged members of a Venezuelan gang, the Tren de Aragua. Now, according to the administration, this group was engaging in irregular warfare within the United States, a term that raises its own set of questions, does it not? It's defined vaguely here, but essentially the gang has been described as conducting organized criminal activities that purportedly threatened national stability. This justification served as the foundation for the recent deportation push. And yet, the clash began almost immediately as deportation flights were planned and executed. Enter U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, a pivotal figure in this unfolding drama. Over the weekend, Judge Boasberg issued a temporary restraining order that barred these removals, citing critical concerns over the legality and implications of such actions under the Alien Enemies Act. What's striking, though, is how this chess game escalated. According to the available timeline, oral directives to halt the flights were issued at around 6:47 p.m. Eastern, but even as those words left the judge's lips, 2 flights had already taken off. The third, well, it reportedly departed roughly 40 minutes later, after the formal written order had been placed on record. Play this clip.
This weekend, the Trump administration deported hundreds of Venezuelans that it says are members of a notorious gang, sending them to a prison in El Salvador. The White House is invoking a little-used but controversial law from 1798. Sources tell ABC News the administration made a calculated decision to ignore a federal judge's directive to turn the flights around. Here's ABC senior White House correspondent Selena Wang.
Tonight, the Trump administration sharing this dramatic video from the president of El Salvador showing alleged Venezuelan gang members arriving to his country overnight, marching into prison. The administration deporting hundreds of Venezuelans from the U.S. that they accuse of being members of Tren de Aragua, despite a federal judge yesterday ordering the administration to temporarily cease deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. The president invoking the obscure wartime law from 1798 that was partially used to intern Japanese Americans during World War II, allowing the government to deport non-citizens without due process. The judge saying during yesterday's hearing, any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States. The president of El Salvador posting, "Oopsie, too late," in response to an article about the court order. Sources tell ABC News the Trump administration made a calculated decision to ignore the judge's ruling to turn around the flights because they were already over international waters. But in a filing today, the Department of Justice claiming some gang members subject to removal under the act were deported before the court's order. The White House saying Tren de Aragua is a direct threat to the national security of the United States. These heinous monsters were extracted and removed to El Salvador, where they will no longer be able to pose any threat to the American people.
They never should have been allowed into our country in the first place. It's our responsibility to protect our families, to keep our streets clean and safe. And that's exactly what the president said he was going to do, and that's what you're seeing being executed right now. We will follow the law.
Lindsay. The logistical gaps, the timing, and the administration's responses, or lack thereof, offer a lot of threads to pull at, don't they? It's as though the events that night embody a standoff between 2 branches of government. The judicial orders, verbal and written, were essentially positioned against the swiftness of executive action and its ability to circumvent the court's directives. And the implications of that, well, those are vast enough to stretch beyond law books into the core of how power can and should be wielded in a democratic system. Now, here's where it gets even murkier. Judge Boasberg explicitly directed that any planes already in the air carrying deportees must be turned around. But the administration's stance? They argued that his oral directive had no legal weight until it was put in writing hours later. For me, that feels less like a legal debate and more like a strategic evasion, does it not? It raises serious questions about how executive power is interpreting judicial authority in real time. And let's not gloss over the language here. The administration claimed that once the planes left U.S. airspace, they fell outside the court's jurisdiction. Judge Boasberg, however, held firm. He pointed out frankly that this argument was, and I quote, a heck of a stretch. His frustration? Oh, it was palpable. And to be honest, it feels warranted given the stakes. Legal experts I've spoken with are nearly unanimous in their concern. They frame it as a broader implication for the rule of law itself. If a court order can be sidestepped this easily, then what stops more egregious abuses of power down the line? What risks are we opening ourselves up to when judicial orders can be treated as optional? It's troubling, isn't it? And it challenges the foundational understanding that courts act as a check, a balance to the executive's reach. Immigration attorneys have raised deeply emotional points as well. Some have shared stories, not hypotheticals, but actual cases, where court orders were blatantly ignored, impacting some of the most vulnerable populations. One attorney I spoke with described a client, a Venezuelan man seeking asylum, who was detained and deported despite legal protections. His markings, a tattoo marking his daughter's birthday, were misinterpreted as gang affiliation. You see, it's more than just legal posturing. It's about people. It's about their safety and their right to due process being treated as second class. And what of those on these flights to El Salvador? Who are they really, and what's being done to ensure the accusations against them aren't mere conveniences to justify these removals? So here we are at the heart of it all, the human cost behind these policies. What about the people who were loaded onto those planes? Their stories feel lost somewhere between legal orders and heated arguments over jurisdiction, don't they? Take, for instance, the Venezuelans deported to El Salvador. Many of them claimed asylum, hoping for protection, only to be accused, often with flimsy or non-existent evidence, of ties to the Tren de Aragua gang. In one case, a man was deported because a tattoo honoring his daughter's birthday was allegedly linked to gang affiliation. Think about that for a moment. Someone's love for their child misinterpreted and turned into justification for their removal. And where were they sent? To a supermax prison run by President Bukele in El Salvador, a facility notorious for its harsh conditions. Human rights advocates have called it bleak, overcrowded, and bordering on inhumane. No due process, no fair trial. These individuals were sent straight into an environment that many describe as dangerously punitive. Can we honestly say that this aligns with any notion of justice? Let's also acknowledge the broader ethical questions here. Deporting individuals to environments that might be lethal. What does this say about us as a nation? The U.S. reportedly paid millions to President Bukele's administration for housing these alleged gang members. $1 million deals and political optics aside, what about the responsibility to ensure that we're not condemning these individuals to further harm? When we prioritize expediency or political agendas over lives, what does that say about our commitment to human rights or, frankly, to our own moral compass? This policy also has implications that stretch far beyond this single case. It signals how easily we might derail from the principles of international law, principles that were supposed to protect individuals from exactly these kinds of scenarios. The idea that we, as a global leader, might set a precedent like this is, well, unsettling, isn't it? I think it forces us to ask, who are we becoming when actions like these seem normalized? It's hard not to walk away from this questioning not only the legality, but the humanity or lack thereof embedded in these decisions. And it's not just a judge or an advocate who needs to take a stand here. It's all of us as a community, as a society. These aren't just policy debates. These are real lives on the line. When we strip away the legal jargon and political theatrics, we're left with a simple yet profound truth. How we treat the most vulnerable among us says everything about who we are as a people. That wraps up today's episode of The Real 411. I want to personally thank each and every one of you for tuning in and for your continued support. It means more than you know. If you found value in today's discussion, please drop a comment. Follow us on all social media platforms and let us know what topics you'd like to see us cover next. Be sure to sign up for our email newsletter so you never miss an update or exclusive insight. And if you believe in independent media that digs deeper and dares to tell the truth, please consider following The Real 411 on Substack and Fanbase. We offer both free and paid subscriptions, and your support helps us continue producing content that informs, empowers, and sparks real conversation. Thanks again for being part of this journey, because remember, the story is never just the headline. Until next time, stay informed, stay bold, and stay real.